My dear brothers and sisters, we are living in a time when the wolves do not howl from afar. They sit at our dinner tables, they laugh with us at family gatherings, and they smile in our very homes. This message is not to divide, it is to awaken. For what good is it to walk through life blindfolded, calling every shadow a friend and every whisper of darkness a coincidence? Discernment over emotion is one of the greatest spiritual weapons you will ever wield. In this life, especially in the realm of close relationships, family, friends, even spouses, we often allow emotions to override the truth that our spirit is screaming. Love, loyalty, nostalgia, and sentimentality are beautiful when rooted in purity, but they become dangerous when they blind us to what is spiritually toxic. Not everyone close to you is sent to bless you. Some are placed to test you, to tempt you, or to twist the path that God has laid out before you. When you let your heart dictate what your spirit should discern, you make yourself vulnerable to manipulation, confusion, and spiritual fatigue. You say, "But I've known them all my life," or "But we grew up together." That may be true, yet even Judas walked with Jesus, broke bread with him, kissed him on the cheek, and still betrayal was in his heart. The mistake many make is assuming longevity equals loyalty, or that blood guarantees alignment. That is not always so. The devil doesn't care how long you've known someone. He only cares if he can use them. Discernment is not suspicion. It's not paranoia. It is the quiet, persistent voice of the Holy Spirit within you that says, something is not right. But when emotion steps in, we silence that voice. We justify the spiritual decay, we explain away the red flags, and we tolerate the disrespect, all because we fear losing someone, offending them, or being labeled as judgmental. Yet what is more dangerous, offending someone or allowing the enemy to corrupt your purpose through them? There are people who will pray with you by day and curse you by night. People who will applaud your victories outwardly while quietly resenting you internally. You must understand this. The enemy doesn't always come roaring with a pitchfork. Sometimes he comes clothed in laughter, shared memories, and familiar voices. That's why discernment must be your compass, not your feelings. How many times have you ignored a nudge from your spirit, only to later say, "I knew something was off"? That wasn't anxiety. That was spiritual alertness. The Holy Spirit doesn't reveal people to hurt you. He reveals them to protect you. Emotions say, give them another chance. Discernment says they've had enough chances. Now it's time to guard your peace. Emotions say they didn't mean it. Discernment says they meant it, and they'll do it again. Do not confuse love with blindness. You can love someone from a distance and still guard your spirit. You can forgive someone and still recognize that they are a threat to your calling. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is to remove yourself from their influence. If you are to walk the narrow path with power and clarity, you must be willing to see people as they truly are, not as you wish them to be. Because in the end, your emotions will comfort your soul, but only discernment will protect it. Test the fruits, not the faces. This is one of the most overlooked truths in the spiritual journey. People are often drawn to charisma, to appearance, to personality. A soft voice, a helpful hand, or a charming smile can easily win trust. But we are not called to judge by appearance. We are called to judge by fruit. And fruit is not revealed in moments. It is revealed over time. Anyone can pretend for a season. Anyone can play righteous when the spotlight is on. But the true character of a person is not exposed in their words. It is exposed in their consistent actions. The face may lie, the words may deceive, but the fruit tells the truth. You cannot hide what you produce. You may speak blessings, but if you sow division, if your presence consistently stirs confusion, if peace evaporates when you enter a room, then what grows from you is not of the Spirit. Jesus said, "By their fruits you shall know them." Not by their title, not by their family name, not by their sweet words, by their fruits. Look at the long-term pattern, not the short-term impression. The fruit of a person's life will always reveal their root. Is their life marked by peace, joy, humility, and love? Or is it marked by chaos, manipulation, bitterness, and pride? because someone who walks with the Holy Spirit cannot consistently produce rotten fruit. And someone who walks in darkness cannot consistently fake the fruit of the Spirit. Eventually, the truth spills out. This is where many get deceived, because they are too quick to trust what they see on the outside. They meet someone with influence, a reputation, or a good public image and assume they are walking in the light. But light is not in what a person says. Light is in what they do when no one is watching. It is in how they treat the weak, how they handle correction, how they respond when others succeed. Those are the fruits that matter. The enemy knows how to disguise himself as an angel of light. So, he trains his vessels to put on a performance. They can pray in tongues and yet gossip in secret. They can post scriptures online and yet curse others in private. They can preach holiness from a platform and yet live in sin behind closed doors. Do not be fooled by the mask. Wait, watch, test the fruit. If a person leaves behind a trail of broken relationships, spiritual confusion, and emotional harm, that is their fruit. If their presence continually breeds pride, arrogance, or competition, that is their fruit. And no matter how gifted they are, no matter how well they speak, no matter how much you care for them, you must not ignore what they are producing, because in the end, the fruit never lies. The fruit will always tell you the truth the face wants to hide. And it is better to see the truth in time than to be destroyed by the lie later. Words have power. They build or break, heal or harm, bless or curse. And too often, we underestimate just how deeply the words of those closest to us can shape our spiritual and emotional state. When someone consistently uses words that bring you down, question your worth, or plant seeds of doubt about your calling, that is not love. It is manipulation, whether they are aware of it or not. We must learn to recognize when someone's language is not uplifting but oppressive, not edifying but enslaving. Many will say cruel things and then cover them with humor or false concern. I'm just being honest. I'm only saying this because I care. But behind the tone is a pattern that chips away at your confidence, that dims your light, that stirs insecurity in your spirit. That is not honesty. That is a spiritual tactic to weaken you under the disguise of love. Manipulation often hides behind a familiar voice. It sounds like concern, but it feels like control. And if every conversation with someone leaves you feeling smaller, uncertain, or spiritually suffocated, you need to pay attention. The enemy doesn't always shout lies. Sometimes he whispers them gently through the mouths of those you love. You're not good enough. You're too spiritual now. You really think you're called. These are not random comments. They are fiery darts meant to pierce your faith. They are curses wrapped in conversation, and if you are not spiritually alert, you will begin to internalize them. You will begin to doubt the very things God affirmed in you. That is how manipulation works. It doesn't control your actions first. It controls your mind. God speaks life. He convicts, yes, but he never condemns you into shame. His correction lifts you, transforms you, and draws you closer to him. But the words of those under the influence of darkness will do the opposite. They will confuse you, isolate you, and push you away from the path of purpose. And often it is done not with violence, but with subtle, consistent negativity. A sarcastic jab here, a passive-aggressive comment there, a reminder of your past failures, repeated just enough to keep you insecure. That is not love. That is spiritual warfare. Do not ignore how your soul responds to someone's words. If after speaking with them, your joy is gone, your peace is shaken, and your vision is clouded, ask yourself, what spirit is operating behind those words? Because people who truly love you may correct you, but their words will still breathe life. Even hard truths will come wrapped in compassion, not control. Even rebuke will carry the fragrance of grace, not the sting of ego. It's time to stop excusing toxic communication as tough love. Love builds. Love protects. Love speaks truth, but it does not wound to dominate. You must stop listening to voices that contradict what God has spoken over your life. Because if you allow words that curse to dwell in your spirit, they will eventually shape your identity more than the word that called you in the first place. There is a pattern that reveals the work of darkness, a pattern not of chaos alone, but of division and deception. And where does the enemy strike first? Not always in governments or institutions. He strikes in families, in friendships, in homes where trust once lived. Demonic influence doesn't always begin with violence or loud rebellion. Often, it begins with whispers, subtle lies, and small offenses that are never healed. The enemy knows that if he can break unity, he can break strength. And so, he plants seeds, not trees, but seeds, seeds of misunderstanding, seeds of jealousy, seeds of mistrust, and over time, they grow into full-blown division. Families are supposed to be a place of safety, a place of restoration. But how often do we see homes full of bitterness, silence, competition, and betrayal? Not because people are naturally evil, but because the spirit of deception has been allowed to creep in unnoticed. It will use offense as its entrance, pride as its fuel, and silence as its weapon. One small disagreement turns into a permanent wall. One lie becomes a wedge that splits bloodlines apart. The spirit behind this is not human. It is calculated, spiritual, and rooted in destruction. When someone constantly stirs conflict, gossips about one relative to another, manipulates conversations to pit people against each other, or refuses to make peace, you are not just dealing with immaturity, you are seeing a deeper spirit at work. That person becomes an instrument of division, even if they claim to be innocent. Their words may sound concerned, but the fruit of their behavior is broken relationships. Their smiles may look sincere, but behind them is a growing fracture in the foundation of trust. Deception is its twin. It clouds judgment, distorts motives, and creates false narratives. People begin to believe things that were never said, doubt intentions that were once pure, and question loyalties without cause. Deception doesn't scream, it slowly rewrites the truth, and once truth is lost, unity follows right after. You begin to see parents turn on children, siblings refusing to speak, friends becoming enemies overnight. This is not just emotional dysfunction, this is spiritual sabotage. One of the greatest victories of darkness is not just to turn people against each other, but to convince them that their separation is justified. Pride begins to whisper, "You don't need them." Bitterness replies, "They never truly cared." And deception completes the sentence, "You're better off without them." But all the while, the enemy rejoices because he knows the power that unity carries. A house divided cannot stand. A family torn by lies cannot move in the blessings God intended for them. If you look closely at those who consistently bring division, who thrive in secrecy, who resist reconciliation, you will begin to discern the spirit behind them. They may not even realize they're being used, but the evidence is clear. Wherever trust is broken and love is poisoned, the enemy is nearby. He is subtle, but he is strategic. He divides to conquer, deceives to destroy, and always masks his plan behind familiar faces and friendly words. Spiritual fatigue is one of the most overlooked warnings from heaven. It is not always a sign that you are weak or lacking in faith. Sometimes it is your spirit reacting to the presence of someone who carries a dark, draining influence. There are people who, without ever raising their voice or showing open hostility, pull the life out of your soul simply by being around them. Every conversation leaves you heavy. Every interaction leaves you questioning your worth, your direction, or your peace. And over time, if you're not paying attention, you'll start to believe it's your fault. That maybe you're too sensitive, too emotional, or too spiritually fragile. But the truth is this: not every draining moment is about your weakness. Some are about their influence. There are individuals whose presence carries an invisible weight. It's not what they say, it's what they carry. You feel confusion, anxiety, or deep unease around them, yet nothing on the surface seems wrong. They smile, they act polite, but your spirit knows something is off. That tension you feel isn't imagined, it's discernment. Your spirit is picking up what your eyes can't see. Some people carry so much unresolved darkness, bitterness, jealousy, rebellion, or pride, that they become spiritual vacuums. They don't fill a room, they drain it. You could spend an hour with them and walk away feeling like you've battled all day. You could talk to them and leave the conversation second, guessing yourself, your calling, even your relationship with God. You start out full of joy, but something shifts. Your peace is disturbed, your clarity foggy, your worship dry. And then you wonder what changed. Nothing changed except your proximity to a spirit that was never meant to be close to you. You must stop dismissing these moments as mood swings or emotional highs and lows. When your spirit is consistently exhausted after engaging with someone, when you feel spiritually numb after time together, that is a sign, and the enemy wants you to ignore it. He wants you to keep calling it love, loyalty, or patience, because as long as you keep them close, he keeps a door open into your life. Darkness doesn't always need to speak to be effective. Sometimes it just needs to stay near. Not everyone who drains you is shouting or attacking. Some do it with silence, with presence, with spiritual heaviness that they carry like a shadow, and the more you stay around it, the more you begin to lose your fire. That's why many believers feel stuck, not because they've lost their faith, but because they've stayed too long in atmospheres that kill it. You must learn to protect your spirit like you protect your body. You wouldn't sit in smoke and then wonder why you're coughing. So why sit in spiritual pollution and wonder why you're weary? God gives you discernment not to make you paranoid, but to preserve your purpose. When you feel drained, don't just ask, "What's wrong with me?" Begin to ask, "Who am I surrounded by?" Because some battles don't come from within you, they come from what's attached to you.